I don't really think it's a secret that a lot of Roblox games aren't very good. I mean, the platform has hundreds of thousands of games. Statistically speaking, they can't all be masterpieces. However, there are definitely good games on Roblox, and while it is funny to talk about the garbage on there, it's also good to talk about the actually well-made games on a platform. One of those games is BlockTales. BlockTales is an RPG inspired by things like Paper Mario, and it was a game first recommended to me by the user Phil7646. I don't think I would have heard of this game otherwise, which is a shame. The game is incredible, and yet it's got less visits than Don't Get Sniffed, so that's just sad. So in this video, I want to talk about BlockTales in order to bring more attention to the game. I recommend that you play it for yourself before watching the video because I will be spoiling all of the major story elements, but I will be glossing over some smaller stuff, so there's still some surprises if you decide to play the game after watching this video. Okay, well let's start talking about this game, starting with...
You think you're the king? I'm the king!
The first of 3 chapters starts off with you being woken up by a penguin called Tutorial Terry. As his name suggests, he's the game's tutorial character, helping you out whenever a new mechanic is introduced. He's also a terrible person. Tutorial Terry is really rude throughout the entire game for no reason. He screams at you, calls you names, kills a man. This guy is a danger to society. Terry tells you to talk to one of the hotel workers, who tells you to go talk to this guy called John Shedelsky at the Roblox headquarters. However, upon getting there, you find out that Shedelsky got beaten up by Pokemon Red and Blue. Then you get sent to the game's first boss fight, which is against Red and Blue, and it's pretty easy. I mean, this is the first boss after all. I'm sure the other ones will be a lot harder, right? Once you beat up Red and Blue, they run away and Shedelsky tells you that the Builder Man has been kidnapped by someone trying to find a sword fight on the High Swords to do some evil stuff. He gives you a wooden sword and sends you on your way to save Builder Man and get the swords. Also, once you get the wooden sword, you start celebrating right next to the guy that's just been immobilized, which is a little insensitive, I think. From here, you traverse the meadows, caves, and mountains in order to get to the Blackrock Castle, defeat the king, and obtain the Ice Dagger. On your way to the castle, you'll encounter plenty of enemies that you can fight in order to gain more XP and ticks, which is the game's currency. The combat in BlockTales is very reminiscent of Paper Mario, but like, you know, the good ones. You got range and melee attacks, with range being good for flying enemies and melee being good for grounded enemies. If you manage to time hitting your spacebar well when you attack, then your attack will be stronger. You can also press space right before getting attacked by an enemy to avoid them, but the timing for this is very precise. There were times where I hit space exactly when the enemy's attack was about to hit me, and I still took damage. You can also run away if you're close to dying or just don't feel like fighting, but I found that running usually fails the first time I do it in a fight, unless I accidentally press run when I'm close to beating a hard boss. Then it decides to work the first time. I was so happy. The fights in the game are fun. The whole timing mechanic with the spacebar helps them feel more involved, which I appreciate. Once you get to the castle, you make your way to the kitchen and meet a wizard chef who tells you to get a rose-colored liquid. Since he's an idiot and put bottles of nearly identical colors right next to each other, you give the wizard the wrong bottle, causing the kitchen equipment to stack on top of each other. Well, I mean, that kinda sucks, but hey, at least nothing bad happened to the wizard. Never mind, Tutorial Terry kills him. What? Then you confront the cruel king, who tells you that he's heard of the future and knows of what's to come. You know, that sounds pretty important, so it'd probably be a good idea to ask him to elaborate, but it's a lot more fun to fight him, so that's exactly what happens. The fight is honestly really easy. I beat it first try, and the same can honestly be said for the other bosses in the game until the final chapter 2 boss. I can understand why the Pokemon Red and Blue fight is so easy. It's the first one after all, but the other fights are just as easy as that one. I did more to random enemies than I did to bosses, at least until the end of chapter 2. Upon defeating the king, he says that he is hearing a voice again, and he proceeds to turn into nothing but a pile of bones. Then you get the Ice Dagger and begin celebrating over a dead guy's remains. Hooray! And that concludes chapter 1 of BlockTales. Overall, a pretty strong start. The gameplay is fun, and while not much happened in terms of story, the king mentioning a voice is pretty interesting, and it's something that'll be expanded upon a bit more in chapter 2. Before I move on to chapter 2, I want to talk about the art style BlockTales has, because I actually really like it. BlockTales has the same art style as an old Roblox game, which I find to be quite charming. Usually when a new game comes out with an old Roblox aesthetic, it's a horror game, because juxtaposing a nostalgic, simple art style with a freaky monster is scary. So having a non-horror game use this art style is nice. The game also expands a bit on this style by giving all the characters a black outline, having choppy animations, and only having 8 directions of movement. These additions are honestly a perfect way to bring the old Roblox style to the modern day. My only real complaint here is that you don't have the option to make your character look like an old Roblox character, which is a shame. I don't know if you've realized, but my avatar doesn't exactly blend well with the game style. Well, that's it for chapter 1. Let's see if chapter 2 manages to live up to it.
On to the mayor's house.
Chapter 2 starts off with Shedelsky, who is now in a wheelchair, telling you to visit Mayor Thaniel to get the Venom Shank. You get to the airport and meet Terry, who as per usual proceeds to bully you. Terry says that he can fly you to Plainstown to meet the mayor, saying that he used to be a professional pilot. Keyword, used to. He probably got fired because of his murder tendencies. Once you land at the airport, you shrink into an anthill, blow up a rock that's been staring at a wall for eons to make him happy again, and make it to Plainstown to meet the mayor. Unfortunately, some griefer is kidnapping the mayor, so you've got to take a jeep to chase them down. At first, I thought that the jeep would just teleport you to the next location, but no, it's actually a driving minigame. That's pretty cool. After traversing a dangerous jungle and having a battle with a real-life Bigfoot, you make it to the Griefer's lair and find him trying to steal the Venom Shank. You proceed to fight him to protect the sword, and like I said earlier, this is the first fight in the game that's actually hard. I died plenty of times here. This difficulty was refreshing though. It was nice to actually have to use my brain for a boss fight. I eventually managed to defeat the Griefer, allowing me to take the Venom Shank, but oh no! The Griefer turned to a Piranha Plant. Also, the Griefer talks about the voices the king mentioned back in chapter 1. Just thought I should point that out. Anyways, after defeating the plant, which was slightly less hard than the Griefer, I got the Venom Shank and ended the chapter. Overall, chapter 2 was just kind of more of the same, which is why the section was so short. Honestly though, I think this chapter is a bit better than the first. The additions of the driving minigame and puzzle help spice up the gameplay, and the story is definitely getting more interesting. There's a cool relationship between the Griefer and the mayor that makes the Griefer's actions quite strange, and the voice the king mentioned at the end of chapter 1 was not only brought back, but also assigned a color. I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but whenever an important thing is mentioned, it'll have a certain color attached to it, which is a pretty cool detail. The last thing I want to mention before moving on to chapter 3 is the game's NPCs, because they're all pretty funny. Every NPC is either really chill or absolutely incomprehensible. I love how nobody cares that he broke into Blackrock Castle back in chapter 1. Also, one thing I noticed is that this game has no microtransactions, which is really cool. I don't think I've ever played a big Roblox game like this without microtransactions. Just goes to show that the developers are making this game because they're passionate about it, not because they want to make money. That's how you know something's good. Speaking of something that's good,
So the first night is never usually that bad in any of the games, so I'll play through.
chapter 3 is by far the best one. If you didn't go play the game when I told you to at the start of the video, then do it now. Like chapter 2, chapter 3 starts off by talking to Shadelsky, who tells you that they've gone after the others. An important thing to note is that they've is dark red, the same color as voices the Griefer mentioned. Then Shadelsky tells you to go get the Ghost Walker at Master Telemon's manor, but once you get there, you realize that it's not just any normal mansion, it's a haunted mansion, and it's full of all the scary Freddy Freakbear type monsters you'd expect to find in a haunted mansion, like zombies, vampire butlers, ghost withered chefs. Wait, what? Yeah, so in a nice bit of continuity, the wizard Terry killed back in the first chapter is back, but as a ghost, and he actually says that he can help you get the Ghost Walker as long as you can get him ingredients for his dish. After you get the ingredients for the wizard chef, he gives you the ghost potion to find the Ghost Walker. However, the wizard says to call him when you find the sword, as it's very dangerous, and if anyone it deems unworthy touches it, they will die. So anyways, guess what happens? Upon touching the sword, you get greeted by none other than Builderman, who has been trapped inside of it this whole time. Builderman says that if you can destroy all the negative thoughts in your mind, you can escape and wield the Ghost Walker. Then, you go outside. The old Roblox aesthetic is gone, replaced by this weird crayon-y black and white art style. As you progress deeper into your mind, the art style keeps changing, which is just such a really cool choice. This section would not be as good as it is if it just stuck to the classic Roblox art style. You'll keep walking through your mind, killing your negative traits, those being greed, isolation, and finally, fear. Like most bosses in the game, these are easy, but honestly, this is just too cool for me to care. Also, the lead up to these bosses is pretty nice, except for the greed fight. You gotta go through a stupid dark maze while avoiding hands that'll send you back to the start. It sucks. After a while, you manage to destroy all of your negative traits and become the true wielder of the Ghost Walker, completing your mission. But wait, isn't it weird that Builderman is here even though this whole ordeal takes place in your mind? That doesn't make much sense. Unless that isn't Builderman. You get sent back to the start of the section, except everything is now corrupted and scary. After walking for a bit, you end up running into your final negative trait, hatred. His dialogue text is dark red, just like the voices mentioned by the Griefer. The fight against hatred is the hardest in the entire game. He's got a lot of health, does a lot of damage, and his attacks are super hard to block. It took me a while to beat him, but I was never sick of the fight. Not only is hatred animated really well, but slowly getting better at dodging his attacks until I was able to avoid most of them was very satisfying. Also, the music in this fight, and honestly just the game in general, is incredible. After about 2 hours, I finally beat Hatred, purifying my soul so I could be worthy of the Ghost Walker. This game started with a penguin screaming at you. In conclusion, Chapter 3 is incredible. It's genuinely one of my favorite things to come out of Roblox. In fact, this whole game is one of my favorite things to come out of Roblox. It feels like an actual game I would have paid real life money for, not something I would find on the same platform as Escape Freaky Grandpa's Evil Mansion Run Obby. If you still haven't played BlockTales, do it now. The game isn't even over, there's gonna be another chapter. If you guys know about any more good Roblox games that I should play, then feel free to let me know. Right now, the only good games I can think about that I want to talk about are Doors and Pressure, so one of those two will probably be the topic of the next Roblox video. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go into the deep recesses of my mind to destroy my one negative trait, my dislike of Despicable Me 4. After all, how could I call myself a real Minions fan if I don't like one of the movies in the franchise? Bye I guess.